All right, so we're now ready to get into Xcode and actually build our first app, which is what we'll do in this video. We're going to create a new Xcode project, which will be the basis of any app that we make, whether it's for iOS, watchOS, or any of the Apple platforms. You can see we're given the choice of a range of templates here. The simplest is a single view app, but we can also make games, augmented reality apps, and use various templates, most of which we'll see in action at various points in this course. But to keep things simple, we'll start with the single view app. A view is a technical term within app development that essentially means a single screen of your app. So if you had maybe a login screen and then the screen of the app itself, each of those would be a view. So a single view app just has a single screen or a single view within the app. Now the product name you can call whatever you like. I'm going to call it my first app. Team we can ignore for now. We'll be using that when we actually submit apps to the App Store a bit later on in the course. Organization name, now here you can put anything you like, but the identifier is a bit more specific and needs to look like a domain name in reverse. So instead of google.com, it's com.google. Xcode will probably create a default organization name and organization identifier, which you can use. Or of course, if you have your own app development company or a company name that you want to use, then you can put something custom in there as well. The bundle identifier is something which has to be unique when the app is actually uploaded to the App Store. For now, it can be whatever you like, but when it's uploaded, it's the primary way that the App Store will identify your app. So this will need to be something unique, but that doesn't really matter too much for now. We're going to be working with Swift in this course, so we'll leave that as it is. We'll be using core data later on in the course, but not yet. And we'll leave tests selected, although we won't be looking at them right now. And then you can just save your project anywhere you like. I'm going to put it on the desktop. We'll be working with source control again later on in the course, so you can either select that or deselect it. It doesn't matter right now. So just click Create, and that will then create the project and set you up with Xcode. Xcode is what's known as an IDE, or Integrated Development Environment, and it contains absolutely everything you need to build apps, including a place to code them, a place to design them, and a test bed to run them as well. So over the duration of this course, you'll get very familiar with this layout, but it might look a little bit intimidating right now. But don't worry, after a few minutes, you'll be absolutely clear with what each of these bits of the screen do. So on the left-hand side, we've got all the files that make up our apps. There's only really two that we want to be focused on right now, and they are viewcontroller.swift. So this is a Swift file, it's Swift code, which controls the view. Remember a moment ago, I explained that a view was a screen on your app. So this controller controls that view. It's the code that allows the view to do something and interact with the user. The second file that we're going to be interested in is main.storyboard, and that's the area where you'll actually be designing the app. So that's where you do things like bring in text labels and images and buttons and everything that your app will be made up from. You can make a huge variety of apps, and that's where we'll be spending most of our time in the first part of the course. Okay, so here you've got your file list. The main center of the screen, as you might have guessed, is where you're editing the file that you've got currently selected. So here we've got the main storyboard. If we were working on a Swift file, we'd see something a little bit more like that. Okay, on the right, we've got our context menu, which shows us various options and settings depending on what we've got selected in the middle here. We'll spend a lot of time looking at that later on, but not too much right now. Up here, in the top right, we can switch on and off various parts of the interface, which is quite useful when you're finding yourself running out of screen space for what you're working on. And then we've got a few buttons in the middle here. If you click on the two circles, you can actually edit two files at once. That's particularly useful when you have the main storyboard and the view controller open at once. We'll see how that works in a couple of videos' time, but that's a really useful setup. On the right there is how we work with version control, which again we'll look at later in the course, but we don't need to worry too much about now. And then the leftmost button just takes you back to a single file view like we had before. Now, depending on your precise Xcode version, you should see a button at the left of that menu, which again is context sensitive and will change depending on what you've got selected. If you've got the main storyboard selected, when you press that button, you get the object library, which is a list of things that you can add to your app. If you are on a Swift page, you'll get a list of default snippets, which is a nice quick way of adding chunks of code into your app. Then at the top here, we've got a status bar, which tells us what's going on. And on the top left, we've got controls for running our app. So I'm going to choose the iPhone 7 Plus. That works quite well for me. And then just click play. And then this will boot up the emulator and run your very first app. So it's a significant moment, this. And here we go. Depending on your system, the simulator can take a little while to start up. Usually takes about a minute for me. But there we go. There is our app. It doesn't look like much, but it is our working app, which is just, for now, a blank screen. We'll see how to add labels and images and other items to the app very, very shortly. But for now, just notice that you can tap on the home button there, and you have actually got a fairly limited but working version of iOS right there on your computer screen, which is quite fun. You can play around with that. But we'll go back into our first app, and then we'll start adding our first interface item to that, which is going to be labels. And we'll do that in the next video.